Let's Science is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
3, 2, 1.
We live in a universe of scientific wonders.
Every day, scientists are inching towards breakthroughs which can change our lives.
We're playing our small part in sharing these wonders with you.
That's why today is a fine day for science.
So let's science.
I want to say before we start, Lindsay, can we get some comments or feedback? If people who are listening to us, would you like us to continue with Roman Concrete 2.0? This is just going to be a bit of a put it aside a little bit. I don't know. I'm just kidding.
Roman Concrete was a bit of a landmark for us. It was just a turning point.
I think it was a trademark for us, Lindsay.
Yeah,
I think we have to buy a patent for that.
We do, yes.
I have not. I'm being silly serious in a sense.
Yeah.
I have not heard any concrete companies using that word, Roman Concrete.
Yeah, they haven't. They haven't patented it. Yeah, we should.
They probably use the stuff. Yeah, that's fine. But you haven't used the name, so I think Catholics of Oz.
Yeah.
I think, and SQPN will take this name and go, this is a Roman Concrete.
Yeah.
But not only that, but it's Roman Concrete with our faith. What is that?
Yeah. There's a revenue stream for the network there if they can get their SQPN's Roman Concrete.
Oh, concrete. Sorry about that. I had to plug that in. Sorry.
Rock hard since 80, whatever it is, 80, 70.
Yeah. Hey.
All right.
In our faith. Rock hard in our faith.
Yeah, something like that. So I wanted today to just do a bit of a whip around of some spacecraft news. What have different spacecraft been doing? Now, I can't cover everything, but what's been happening in some of the developments in space travel in late January and late December, all throughout January. So I'm going to go through a couple of topics very briefly. So the first one I wanted to touch on was we did an episode a while ago on NASA's Parker Solar Probe, which is a probe.
Oh, where was that?
It was a probe that was sent basically to study the sun.
That was it, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so there was an article from the Associated Press in late December, which talked about how the solar probe survived a close brush with the sun's scorching surface. So, the way
that is hot as.
Yeah, it's hot as. It really is.
That is hot. Wow.
Yeah. And what was cool about this is when we talked about it, we talked about how the heat shield on the solar probe actually kept all of the components behind it relatively cool. So the probe didn't melt or get destroyed by the heat.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So the way that it was designed to face the sun protects all the components and it can get fairly close. So it says that the Parker probe successfully made the closest approach to the sun, the space agency had confirmed. It passed within a record-breaking 3.8 million miles or 6 million kilometers. NASA received an all-clear message from Parker on Thursday night confirming that it had survived the journey, thankfully. This was the probe that was launched in 2018 to get a close-up look at the sun. It has since flown straight through its crown-like outer atmosphere or corona. And with this close brush complete, the craft is expected to circle the sun at this distance through to at least September this year. It's the fastest spacecraft built by humans. It travels at 690,000 kilometers per hour.
That is too fast.
Yeah.
How can a craft up?
Yeah, using the gravity of the sun and so on, it's
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's from here to Sydney in
about, goodness me.
The time it takes me to finish this sentence. Yeah.
2025, we haven't figured out how to get to another state that fast.
Yeah, we can't even get a train line going fast enough.
Ooh, okay. That's
politics.
Wow.
Okay. So yeah, as mentioned before, it's outfitted with a heat shield that can withstand temperatures of up to, in both different types of temperatures, 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit.
I'd love to have something of that cold in our cars for the hot summer, man.
Or 1,370 degrees Celsius. Yeah. So the whole point of the Solar Parker probe is that it will help scientists to better understand why the sun's outer atmosphere is hundreds of times hotter than its surface and what drives the solar wind. The supersonic stream of charged particles constantly blasting away from the sun. So that's the first one. The second one is, this was in early-ish January, early to mid-January, and the title is Spacecraft Buzzes Mercury's North Pole and Beams Back Stunning Photos. So this is a show note so that photos are just
Mercury.
amazing.
Yeah.
I love photos of
Oh.
other planetary bodies, and these ones are, I can't describe how stunning these photos are. So
Done very well, man. Yeah.
so
Wow.
the European and Japanese robotic explorer swooped as close as 295 kilometers above Mercury's night side.
Wow, that's close,
Very
isn't
close.
it?
Yeah,
In a
close.
sense,
Super
yeah.
close. Yep. In space,
Yeah.
that's very close.
Yeah.
Passed directly over the planet's north pole. And then the European Space Agency released some stunning snapshots showing the permanently shadowed craters at the top of our solar system's smallest innermost planet. So Mercury is the planet closest to the sun. So we're moving from the sun and outwards in our solar system in this chat.
Cool. Cool.
And my understanding is that Mercury doesn't actually rotate. So it has a permanent...
Really?
Yeah. So it has a permanent side that is dark.
Just dark.
Yeah. So it was taking...
Wow, that's the first.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's taking photos of this side. It said cameras also captured views of neighboring volcanic plains and Mercury's largest impact crater, which spans 1,500 kilometers. So this has been the sixth flyby of Mercury for the Bepi Colombo spacecraft since it launched in 2018. The maneuver put the spacecraft on course to enter orbit around Mercury late next year, or late this year, I should say. The spacecraft holds 2 orbiters, one for Europe and the other for Japan, that will circle the planet's poles. The spacecraft itself was named for the late Giuseppe Colombo, a 20th century Italian mathematician who contributed to NASA's Mariner 10 mission to Mercury in the 1970s, and two decades later to the Italian Space Agency's tethered satellite project that flew on the US space shuttles. So again, links to that article in the show notes to look at those absolutely beautiful photos.
Yeah. Wow.
So getting a bit closer to Earth, probably between Earth and the Moon for this one. This is from, again, around the same time, early to mid-January. 2 private lunar landers head toward the Moon in a roundabout journey. And there's also a really cool story attached, a sub-story attached to this one. So in a 2-for-1 moonshot, SpaceX launched a pair of lunar landers for the US and Japanese companies, space companies, looking to jumpstart business on Earth's dusty sidekick. I like how they put that. So
There's Dusty Sidekick. Okay. Poor Moon.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's the Moon.
Come on. You don't...
Yeah. Come on, be nice. Just driving it as Dusty. It is Dusty. Yeah, it's a whole...
It is. It is.
Yeah, so the 2 landers rocketed away in the middle of the night from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in the latest stream of private spacecraft aiming for the Moon. They shared the ride. So these 2 companies shared the ride to save money. However, the 2 spacecraft parted company because they've got different journeys to get to.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So they're going to take
Cool.
months, but one will get there first and then the other will get there later. So one of them is from Tokyo-based iSpace. Now, this is their second go because, sadly, their first lander crashed into the Moon a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Wait, is it still there? Oh, no, sorry, but of course it's still there. Sorry.
It's still there. I mean, it's just not...
It's not working. Yeah, it's correct. That's correct.
So this time it has a rover on board, a small rover, which will scoop up and gather lunar dirt for study and plans to test potential food and water sources for future explorers. So then Texas-based Firefly Aerospace is flying 10 experiments for NASA, including a vacuum to gather dirt, a drill to measure the temperature below the surface, and a device that could be used by future moonwalkers to keep the sharp, abrasive particles off their spacesuits and equipment.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So this one should reach the Moon first, and it will attempt a touchdown in March at Mare Crisium, a volcanic plain in the northern latitudes of the Moon. So, and the iSpace lander, named Resilience, so it's the Japanese one, will take 4 to 5 months to get there and touch down in late May or early June at Mare Frigoris, even further on the north of the Moon's near side. And there was another story I wanted to add to this as well. So we know what science they're doing. However, so the Japanese one, the iSpace lander and rover, says will stay near the lander, traveling up to hundreds of yards or meters in circles at speeds of less than 1 inch per second. So we're not moving pretty fast there. However, the rover has a special delivery for the Moon as well. A toy-sized red house designed by a Swedish artist. So I've got an article to this as well. So you can see it. There's a picture of a little aluminium red house model that's on the rover, and it's going to be delivered to the Moon. This little red house was created by a Swedish artist It says here that he's about to have the dream of a lifetime fulfilled. So if all goes well, it'll be put on the surface of the moon in about 5 months. The moon house, the size of a big hand, will hitch a ride to the moon on a lunar lander. The artist, Mikael Genberg, said that he's been wanting to put his typically Swedish-looking miniature house on the moon for 25 years. He said it was yeah, that's right. Yeah, 25 years. It was you got a dream, right? He said it was a crazy, maybe idiotic, but at the same time, in my mind, really poetic thought to put a red house with white corners on the surface of the moon. And now it's going to happen, he said on Facebook. What is the purpose, he says? It's art. Yeah, it's art. That's the purpose.
Okay. Okay. When you think about it, he will be the first person to put a house. I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't matter if it's miniature, whatever size. You've put your first house on a moon, and that's what it is.
Now, let's remember, we've had astronauts play golf on the moon. All right.
Exactly.
Now we've got a small house. So these are cool little things. Yeah. So the house itself is made out of aluminium and daubed with a special space-certified paint. It's 12 centimeters long, 8 centimeters wide, and 10 centimeters tall. Genberg's signature art project, so this house, has already traveled around the world in recent years. The moon house has been installed up in trees, underwater. It was taken to the Great Wall of China and even to the International Space Station 400 kilometers above the Earth as a companion to Sweden's first astronaut. So the house has been to space before, but now it's going to be permanently settled on the moon. So he said if this is successful, Genberg says that once the rover lands in about 4 months, it should release the house, take some pictures, and leave it alone, standing there for thousands and thousands and maybe millions of years.
Wow.
So I thought that was a little cool addition to the two moon rover, the two moon lander missions, is that there's a little tiny red house that's going to be put there as well. So there's an article to that too. Second last story is to do with the development of rockets for spaceflight. So recently, there were 2 significant launches of rockets in January. So the first one came from space company Blue Origin. So we're going to be looking at billionaire-owned space companies now. So Jeff Bezos, of Amazon fame, he owns the space company Blue Origin and he funds a lot of it himself. So they launched their prototype New Glenn rocket. So the idea of the New Glenn rocket is that it is a massive 98-meter tall rocket. So it's a large one. And it's a 2-stage rocket. So it's got a booster, a very powerful booster to take its spacecraft into space. And then the second stage is the spacecraft, which at this time, the second stage had a device attached to it called Blue Ring. And Blue Ring is essentially its platform where people can attach their satellites, attach their gear, and so on. So Blue Ring is like a platform so Blue Ring would be launched from the second stage to deploy satellites to whatever it might be. Now, what's significant about the New Glenn rocket is that it's also designed to come back to Earth and land at sea on a ship.
Cool.
And then be used. Their main goal was to get Blue Ring into orbit, which they were successful in doing. And as a bonus to recover the booster, which this time they weren't able to do, it was difficult. However, it's only the first launch and they will continue to work on it. And I think they were looking at I think it was 7 or 8 launches this year, according to the article. So New Glenn is going for it. Blue Origin is also famous so my understanding is they were actually the first one to create a rocket that was reusable. They have their rocket, what was it called? I forgot what it's called now. There was New Glenn and New something else. Anyway, their suborbital rocket was the one that goes just beyond the Kármán line, launches a little capsule for space tourists who get to be in space for
correct, yes.
Experience weightlessness. Yep. The booster itself comes back to Earth and lands. They've successfully done that several times. And then the capsule comes back and just floats back to Earth on a parachute. So New Shepard was the name of that one. Yeah. So
New Shepard.
Yep.
That does sound familiar. Yep.
So my understanding is they were the first to create a reusable rocket, but they hadn't got anything into orbit yet because that was a small rocket. So this is so New Glenn is their next step. They take a very long time because they develop a bit like NASA. They take a long time to make rockets because they launch to be successful as early as possible. Whereas this next company launches to blow things up on their path to success. So we've talked about these ships several times on the podcast. This is the last one. SpaceX loses spacecraft after catching rocket booster at the launch pad in latest Starship test. So SpaceX is developing the largest, most powerful rocket ever created, and this thing is a behemoth. It is amazing to look at. So Starship is a large rocket or a large spacecraft that is brought into space by a super heavy booster, which has about 33 engines, which is absolutely amazing. This is the 7th test. I hope I'm right about that. Anyway, they've had a number of tests. So what happens is their way of development is to design, launch, and test, to fail. And then from that failure, they use the information they've collected to then improve and improve. Now, what was significant about this launch is that they, for the second time, were able to catch the booster. So if you know about the Falcon 9 rockets, the booster lands on Earth again. So it comes back to Earth and just lands safely.
It's so cool when you see it.
It's very cool. Yeah, it's awesome every time. Yeah, and what happens is they keep their costs down because they can reuse the booster. They have to build brand new ones all the time.
That's correct.
So Starship is the next step of that. But with Starship, it can't just land on the ground. It needs to be caught. So they have a giant tower, which they call Mechazilla, because it's got these big arms, these big robotic arms.
Oh, Mechazilla. I think I've been hearing it's called chopsticks. Okay, that's something else.
And so Mechazilla has these arms. They describe like chopsticks, right? Because as the booster gets close to the tower, the chopsticks or the arms will close and catch the rocket. And for the second time, they were able to successfully do that.
Yes.
And it looks like it's completely out of this world. I haven't been able to get used to seeing it. It blows my mind that they're able to do this. Now, Starship had some new things added to it. So it was a step up from the previous one. But sadly, this version of Starship, when it got to space, it didn't make it to orbit. It sadly exploded. And there's footage in the article that I've got in the show notes showing the debris coming back. So the reason is that there was leaking fuel, which they think may have built up pressure. So it exploded about 146 kilometers above the Earth, so built up pressure in a cavity above the engine firewall. So what they're saying is fire suppression will be added to the area with increased venting and double checking for leaks in the future. So the only way, so they launch more often and explode more often, but eventually they'll come up with a refined product. So now they had plans in this one to launch some dummy satellites, but sadly they couldn't do that this time because they want to test. They've got like the Pez dispenser, those lollies. So so it operates like a Pez dispenser. It just
really,
very, very cool. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, that's my wrap up of some space news, space travel news. But there's some very cool. There's always really cool missions that are happening. So just wanted to put that out there as well.
Oh, this is so. Just so it's reminiscence of, I think I've been talking to you, Lindsay, and a few other guys and our friends like the game we're playing. It's called Star Citizen.
Yes.
So I'm seeing the comparison. SpaceX is Star Citizen in its alpha stage because they keep on making it, having bugs, getting it fixed. And all the other games we play, what's it called? Baldur's Gate and all that. Yeah. All those guys who are the bigger sort of companies, they're like NASA. Yeah. So they'll make a game, make sure it's all stable before it's released. Before it's released.
Yeah.
And if there are bugs and everything after the game's made, they fix them and the game's complete.
Yes.
So this is
NASA.
This is a reminiscence of that.
Blue Origin, their design philosophy is to take longer and to do their best to get it right the first time. So SLS, or the Space Launch System, which was an amazing launch as well, but that went pretty much perfectly the first time, but it took a long time and a lot more money than they expected to get it going.
Exactly. And there it is as well. Yeah. It's about the money as well and the budget and how you want to do it.
Yeah, but NASA is government funded, so they can probably get away with it a little bit. Yeah, whereas SpaceX
true.
is design the thing, build the thing, let the thing blow up. I think they always talk about in their mission this, and they always have excitement guaranteed as their their last thing. So they're not worried when things explode because they know that's most likely going to happen.
Exactly.
What's good is each time they get a little bit further each time in their progress. Yeah. So at some point we're going to see functioning starships, and eventually starships are going to be able to refuel in space as well. That's the idea. So that's very reusable. And and the second stage, which is the Starship, is designed to also eventually be caught as well and reused. So they want to have 100% reusable rockets, which is pretty mind-blowing. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Let's Science is brought to you by StarQuest Media and is a fortnightly podcast that brings you the scientific wonders of our universe from a distinctly Catholic point of view. For more from Caroline, Lindsay, and friends, listen to the StarQuest show, Catholics of Oz. Find links from today's show at sqpn.com/science. And find the Catholics of Oz at sqpn.com/Oz. Be sure to follow the show in Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever you can find podcasts, or on the SQPN YouTube channel. The generous donations of our patrons at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue Let's Science and all the shows at StarQuest, which makes our nonprofit mission possible. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. Join us next time for more scientific wonders, and thank you for listening to Let's Science on StarQuest. Here's another show on the StarQuest network you're sure to enjoy. The Secrets of Doctor Who. Find the show wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/Doctor Who.